Sovereignty is in some ways the most basic idea of modern international relations. States are the representation of sovereignty. The 190 plus states are the principal actors in the world. Sovereignty means that within the borders of a state, that government has complete authority. The people who control a country, they are able to decide what kind of a political system they want to have. They have a control over the resources. They have a monopoly on the legitimate use of force. They're meant to control what goes in and what comes out. They are the sole legitimate representative of the country as a whole. And states agree to recognize these rights of other states. So essentially, sovereignty is a set of understandings. You can do pretty much as you please within your borders in exchange for my being able to do pretty much as I please within my borders. A good deal of history has been about the urge of peoples to have countries of their own, essentially to become sovereign. When sovereignty came along as an idea, roughly 4 centuries ago, it was a big innovation because before then, you had a world not made up of states for the most part, not made up of countries, of empires and the like, where you had constant warring, where one party was always involved in the internal workings of another. So when sovereignty came about, a hands-off mutual understanding, that dramatically reduced the amount of conflict. So that was an extraordinarily positive idea. We've also seen the limits to the idea of sovereignty. It doesn't deal with the problem of when states are too weak, they can't manage what goes on within their borders. It doesn't deal with what happens when the government itself is the threat to the peace within its borders. It doesn't prevent war, we obviously know that. What we see constantly throughout history is that territory is fought over. World War I, World War II, these were wars over ideology and power, but also over territory. In 1990, you had Saddam Hussein, then the leader of Iraq, go into his neighboring state, Kuwait, take it over and absorb it into his own country. Or much more recently, you had Russia go into Ukraine and take Crimea. So stronger states, those who wish to ignore borders, not accept that the sovereignty of someone else is sacrosanct. This is part of history. Sovereignty is not a panacea, but it has set some of the basic ground rules of international relations. Sovereignty is being challenged in some ways as never before. From above, if you look at Europe, for example, you have supranational arrangements. The European Union is a challenge to sovereignty where governments voluntarily give up certain powers to Brussels. Sovereignty is being challenged from below. Groups like ISIS, drug cartels, pirate organizations. These are entities that don't recognize the legitimate, unique role of the state. Sovereignty is being challenged from the side. Globalization, when particles of carbon or emails travel, they don't say, oh, I have to stop at the border because that's a sovereign state. When we talk of sovereignty, we often talk in fairly absolute terms, that what goes on within a country's borders is its business alone. And that idea, while still embraced by some governments, has been challenged throughout the modern era. In the mid-90s, after the genocide in Rwanda, a movement grew up to basically say, sovereignty can't be absolute. We're seeing an idea take hold, what's called the responsibility to protect, that sovereign governments not only have rights, but responsibilities. One of the responsibilities is not to massacre their own people or not to allow their own people to be massacred or victims of genocide. And when a government is unable or unwilling to protect its own people, the international community has a certain right to step in. What this suggests is that sovereignty has become a little bit conditional on whether a government is willing or able to fulfill its obligations. The challenge is how to introduce this wrinkle without undoing some of the good things of sovereignty, which have essentially kept the world from constantly being at war with itself.